And I would like to introduce our longtime friend and companion, Professor Gregory Smith from, let's see if I can get this right, Greenwood, South Carolina.
Yeah, Greenwood, South Carolina.
And his subject is Hebrew, as it is used in the Hebrew prayer book. And he promises that this will be pretty easy for us.
I think so, and I think it'll be helpful, not only from a linguistic standpoint, but there are so many things doctrinally. Most people don't know this, but there's a lot of things doctrinally that you can get out of learning grammar from Hebrew that sort of underscore. And I'll bring some of those things out as we move along.
And we will do this in the name of the Father and the Son. Amen.
Amen.
We're going to need some paper, right?
Yeah, you're going to want to have some paper. Now, I think what we're going to do is find out, I'll sort of give a brief overview of what my plans are. And of course, you know, I'll adjust to the needs of the class as we go. I don't know where everyone's at. I don't know if there's anybody in here that has memorized the letters. There's some people, I think it was Joshua I was talking to, and he said that he's quite familiar with a lot of the letters. I don't know if he'll be in here tonight or not, but some people are. But if we have to go over the letters and I can show you how to write them, you're going to have to, in order to get the most out of this, it is recommended that you spend some time during the week between the classes to practice some of these letters and say them as well, because when it comes to retention, being able to retain what you're learning, I have always found that not only should you hear something, you should see something, and you should write something. Those are the three modalities that when you implement all of these together, your retention statistically goes up much higher than as if you had just was listening to something and you couldn't see it, or you weren't actually writing it, or maybe you were writing it but not listening, or so on, that kind of thing. We're putting all three of these together, so that's my goal, the method that I teach. And I found that over the years that has been very useful. I suppose, should we wait a little longer here, Jack, or was this the group we're going to have tonight?
I think they'll probably straggle in, but I think we should just go right on.
Okay, let's go right on then. Well, let me give you some background of how I came into this. I think that would be appropriate at this point. I've been in South Carolina for about 9 years, but I grew up in Michigan. And my interest in Hebrew sort of went hand in hand with my interest in the Hebrew roots as I began to question some of the things in the Free Methodist Church. I grew up in the Free Methodist Church in the North. For those of you in the South, you'll probably see more United Methodists down here. But there was a split over slavery and over paying for pews, I guess, that caused the Free Methodists to split from the United Methodists. So I grew up in the Free Methodists.
They're free because their pews were free. In those days, you had to pay for your pew, and if you didn't pay for the pew, you didn't get any place to sit.
Right, right. So let me adjust my, there we go, adjust this volume just a little bit so I can hear a little clearer. I got somebody with a chat here. Yeah, Allyson, that's a good resource. It is. I think they use more of the Sephardic pronunciation. So that's more, the people that consider that more true to the original. With any language that you have, though, you have something called semantic change, and we learned about this in my English courses in university. For example, if you were to get a King James in its original first edition, it would be extremely challenging for you as an English reader and speaker to read that. But yet, it's considered English. Why is that? Because of something called semantic change. That means that over time, languages tend to dissipate and change, and they're organic in nature. But the thing about Hebrew is that it has been it's a little bit of a different history. Hebrew is a spoken language today in the nation of Israel, but for hundreds and hundreds of years, it was pretty much almost considered a dead language. And it was only known and held by those in the priest class, those who studied this, and they added vowel markings to it in order to try to preserve the sound system. And for hundreds of years this went on. Even the common Jewish person really didn't have a lot, unless when they went to synagogue, the rabbi might have some Hebrew under his belt. But when it comes to semantic change with Hebrew, because there's such a long period of where this was simply retained as a religious/classical language, the change is minimal. It's minimal. Now, compared to English, I mean, English is a real bastardized language, let me tell you. English comes from all different sorts of sources and has changed dramatically over the years. Hebrew, on the other hand, my fascination with it, and this, among other facts about it, sort of spurred me on to learn Hebrew, is that when you compare the two geographical localities of Jewish communities that retained this knowledge, this classical religious Hebrew language, say between the Middle Eastern branches of Judaism, that being the Sephardic branches, and the Western branches of Judaism, that being the Ashkenazi branches, there are only about 8 to 9 significant, we'll call them significant. There's a few more insignificant differences, but 8 to 9 significant differences. Now, if you knew how many differences there was in a language that had been spoken by people throughout the generations, you would realize how small that is. That means that Hebrew has been preserved remarkably well compared to many other languages. Moving on then, my fascination with this language then sort of blossomed when I was in Michigan. We had a Torah study. Actually, I started out teaching my boys. I had 3 boys, and I was teaching them right from the first Hebrew primer. I mean, actually, we started out with flashcards. And because we realized we needed to memorize these letters before we could get anything out of a book. And so that's what we began to do. And I used to just flip these cards to them. Even when we went to a doctor's office, believe it or not, I'd be flipping those cards there. And I didn't know the pronunciation of all of them as properly as I should have. But I remember in particular one instance when I went to the doctor's office and I was flipping these cards for the boys when they were along with me. And there was a young gentleman sitting across the waiting room, and he was looking at me intently. I could tell he was interested. And when I got to the letter chet, I didn't know that's how it was pronounced. I was saying to the boys, Chet. Because it's C-H-E-T, transliterated. It sounds like Chet. Sounds like Chet, the man's name. I didn't know any better. And that young man piped up, and he said, no, that's wrong. I looked at him, and I said, well, what is it then? He said, it's het. I said, well, how do you know? I was a little indignant at the moment, because here I was teaching my boys, and he was sort of, I don't know, what do you call that, Jack? Being put on the spot by younger guy in a waiting room. So he says, well, I was raised in a Jewish yeshiva. I grew up as a child in a Jewish yeshiva, a shul, a school. In his primary days, he was Jewish. I believe that was a divine appointment because it encouraged me to look deeply into this and study it. Good. I've had ups and downs health-wise, so it's gotten slack over the years, and then I would pick it up again. So it's kind of like anything, you know, in life. But I have an eldest son who is, I have to boast about him a little bit. He's in Queens University in Charlotte, North Carolina, and his knowledge of Hebrew, I will even say in certain areas surpasses my own, because he carried on when I got ill and I just kind of let the study drop. He kept going. So he can take a line of Hebrew and he can read it right out. He can translate it. It's pretty impressive. So my other two boys, they have Hebrew to varying degrees. Okay. So anyway, we started learning this in Michigan, and I then was one of 3 men who sort of founded a Torah study. And we began to learn Hebrew. We had as many as 20 people showing up on a Sabbath. It grew to quite a group. Then, due to certain circumstances, I had to move out of state, job situation, without digressing, but I ended up in South Carolina, and I got involved with the Hebrew Roots groups here, and they were very interested in Hebrew, so I began to teach Hebrew grammar here in South Carolina. I had 3 separate groups, one in Columbia, one in Prosperity, one in Orangeburg, 3 different classes during the week. And it's amazing. Now, I don't see the level of interest today that I saw back then, but that also is something that I did for quite a while. And then I think I've told Jack about my health issues that I had over the last 5 years, 6 years, I think now. And I've just started getting back on my feet and back into it. So that's a background of where I'm coming from and how I've gotten into this language. Any questions, comments at this point? Okay, all right. So,
Greg, one question.
Yeah.
Are you talking about are we going to be studying the flame letters, or are we going to be studying the Paleo at all at first?
We're going to be focusing on the post-Babylonian script, not the Paleo.
The flame letters is what I know it as, but okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
It's going to be block script. It's not going to be handwritten. We're going to handwrite block script, though. Now, if you want to learn Paleo, you'll just have to, a few letters look similar. You'll just have to pick that up, or maybe sometime I'll offer a class, but it's not within the scope of this class. So, any other questions, by the way? That's a good question.
Yes, sir. Do you need to write the block? Do you need a special kind of pen, or can you work it out without one?
I just use this here, plain old ink pen. I sometimes, in order to make it easier for the students, and you'll probably notice that I'll do that with you guys, I will double it up. And I'll show you what I mean by doubling, so that it looks more blockish. So we'll go over some of the letters. We'll see where everyone's at. And the goal, in a nutshell, of this book is to go through various prayers. For example, the Shema, the blessing over the bread, the blessing over the wine, the Sim Shalom. We're going to look down the index here, this list, and you'll see the various ones. And at the beginning of the class, after the introductions are finished, I will show you, we'll go right to the end of the chapter, and I will show you the one we're working on, that chapter. I will read it to you. We'll look at the English translation, and then I will cant it for you.
Oh, boy. That's kind of exciting.
So,
I always want to start right at the beginning.
okay. Say again. Say back at the beginning.
I say I've been wanting to study from the beginning, but with some kind of goal in mind.
Right, right. The goal is to get familiar with these prayers, these they're like chantings. I mean, really. And they have a tune. Now, what I'm going to be using is primarily what most of the Western synagogues, their tune. There are some that are a little different. If you go to the Middle East of the synagogues there, that's more Sephardic. They might have a little different tune, but the Hebrew's the same. Okay? You'll just have to, if you're ever in that situation, you'll just have to pick up their different tune. But I'm giving you the tune that you're going to run into in America and Europe, most places like that. Okay? And just about 99.99% of every Messianic Hebrew root / Nazarene / Israelite, whatever title you want to put on there, there's a lot of them out there. So anyway, that's what we'll do. We'll start out with that. So, any questions so far? Comments? Okay, let's carry on. Let me switch down here. This is the book. Now, you don't have to buy this book because I'm going to show you everything right here. But if you do want to get this book, it could be useful. You can get it not too expensively from Amazon, or you can get it on Kindle. Kindle, I think it's on Kindle. Don't quote me, but I think it is. But definitely in book form. So let me switch down here, and I'll show you what this book looks like. Okay, we'll move my other camera. All right, so let me there we go. Okay, so Prayerbook, Hebrew, the Easy Way, 3rd edition. There's the authors. I think I gave the ISBN for you guys, so you can look that up before. Okay, so let's look here at the index. Okay, now the introduction is just telling you that this Siddur is basically the culmination of what you're going to hear in the synagogues, okay? But like I said, there's many, many messianic overtones and many biblical overtones in here, and I'll bring those out. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why I study this. So here's where I wanted us to look here, contents, okay? Everybody see that okay? Let me give it a little more of a nudge here on the, there we go. Okay, so we're going to be looking at the Shema. Some of these other ones, the blessing over the bread, blessing over wine. We got Sim Shalom in here. The Shechianu, the Aleinu, Ein Kehohenu, Ekad Eloheinu, Kedusha. Okay, so there's quite a few of them here. Avinu Malkeinu, Oseh Shalom, the blessing after the Baruch Hu. We have so on and so forth. So there's quite a few of them. So if you were to get through this this book, you're going to have quite a familiarity with what you're going to hear in any messianic group that uses any bit of liturgy. Some of them don't use any of it, but a lot of them do, particularly the mainstream ones. Okay? So what we're going to do then, now, let's start at the very beginning, which is the Aleph Bet. So the Aleph Bet, like the alphabet in English, are all the letters of the Hebrew alphabet, and beginning with Aleph, ending with Tav. So I'm going to bring that up for you, and we're going to go over these. Okay, share screen. There we go. All righty. Let me get to my annotate here because I'm going to need to. There we go. We'll use that right there. How about a different color? Yeah, we'll do brown. Okay, so we're going to start from this direction. Can everybody see that? Okay, we're going to go from right to left. And I'm going to be reading these letters, and you'll see them. Of course, they've given them to you down here in the English, which makes it a little easier. So let's look up here from the top right-hand corner, right to left. We have Aleph. Okay, first letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Then we have Vet. Okay, then we have Gimel. Then we have Dalet. Okay, and we have Hey, Vav, Zayin. Okay, down here, next line, right to left, Chet, not Chet, Chet. It's guttural. It's like you're hocking up a big phlegm and you're getting ready to spit it out. Give it kind of a real hoarse H. Maybe you've got a really bad cold and you're just hacking, and it's kind of like that, okay? It's a little extravagant with the explanation, but you get the idea. So let's go to Tet. By the way, that's called a guttural. The Het is a guttural, okay? Circle that. We have Tet, next one. Smallest letter of the Hebrew alphabet, Yod. Then we have Chaf, another guttural, okay? Now, I don't like how they do it on here because I'd rather you be introduced to the final forms at the end of the Hebrew letters, but I'm going to give them to you here anyway, since this is how they presented it. Because I discovered that maybe it would be better to use this rather than for me to show you flashcards, okay? Through the so that's why we're using this part here. Anyway, this next one here is called a final form. If I could get a proper circle around it. That's called Chaf Sofit. Notice how it extends below the line. Can everyone see my writing? Is that coming through? Okay. Now, just about every one of these final forms, except for Mem Sofit, and we'll come to that in a minute, extends below the line. That's a telltale sign to you, as someone learning the letters, that this is a final form letter. Okay? So what is that? What is a final form? Well, let's say you've got 3 or 4 Hebrew words that make up a sentence, okay? Let's say you have this letter, this Chaf here, that's coming up somewhere in one of those words. If it is in the beginning of the word, it's this one here, okay? It's going to be this one, Chaf. It's going to be this form right here. See how I'm circling that? But guess what? If it shows up somewhere at the end of the word, then it's going to suddenly transform magically for you into this right here. It'll show up like this. Okay? Now, notice that the only way to really know here is look at the top edge here. Look at that edge there and look at this edge here. They're similar. Okay? That's one of the clues on how you differentiate between the regular Chaf right here and the Chaf Sofit. Okay, let me clear this. Okay, so let's carry on here. Let's go to the next one. Lamed. L sound. Next one, Mem. Okay? Next line, right to left. Here we go, another final form. Remember I said out of the 5 final letters, one of them does not extend below the line? Okay, here we go, Mem Sofit. It looks almost blockish. Now, when I write this, I try not to be so ornate when I'm writing. If I can find my pen, there it is. All right, so let me show you something here. Okay. Okay, so if I'm writing this, okay, so we'll start out like this. From the bottom, this is a regular mem. We'll throw a little tail on there. Mem. But a mem Sophite, when we write, I just do a simple block character like that. Mem Sophite. That's an F there, by the way. Looks kind of like a P. Okay, that means final form. Sophite equals final. Okay. All right, does that make sense? All right, let's go back to our... any questions so far, by the way?
It seems just, I write through these and it just seems like I muck it up. There's got to be some standardized way of learning this handwriting.
Well, when I do this for students, I just take a lot of the ornateness out of it. I make it very simple, like when I wrote it there for you. But that is the basic. It's not, there is a handwritten. It's like a cursive type written form that's used in Israel. But I find that it's always best to start with the block, because if you're reading a sign in Israel, it's going to be post-Babylonian block form, most likely. There are some signs that are more in the cursive, but there's more than not, it's going to be a post-Babylonian block form like this. Okay, so let's carry on here. Where's my...
So when you say final form, what do you mean by that?
Well, let's say that you have the word for water in Hebrew, mayim. That starts with a mem. That's this one right here. Okay, I'm going to circle this for you. Starts with a mem. Okay, the beginning of that word is this form here. But also mayim ends with the M sound too, doesn't it? It's another mem, but guess what? It's not going to be, wait a minute, I'm wrong here. It's this one. I was looking at the wrong. This is the one we start with, mayim. This is the final form right here. Okay, that's the final form. Let me do this again. I'm going to clear this because I think I confused you guys. I was looking at the wrong one here. Let's say we have the word mayim in Hebrew. There we go. That's what it's going to look like because it's at the beginning of the word. Then we end. Mem, yod, mem. Mayim. Okay, there it is. There's the final form. Because it's showing up at the end of the word, it transforms. There's 5 of these. You just have to memorize these. Just become familiar with them. Okay, that's what we mean by final form. If that letter shows up at the end of a word, it's not going to look like the regular form. It's going to transform. There's only 5 of them. You have to memorize. Okay. All right. Let's go to noon now. Okay, there's our noon. And then noon is also one of those 5. Noon Sophite. Notice how it extends below the line. Okay, and notice, how do we know that this is the same letter? Because these are together, so it's easy for you, but what if they're not together? Look at the top. Look at the top. They're the same, aren't they? That's how you recognize the regular noon here and the noon Sophite, okay? Well, that's what I point out to the students. Okay. So then our next one, change to this here. We have another guttural. This is an S sound, samech. Samech. It's got a guttural at the end of it. Then we have something called ayin. Okay. By the way, ayin is a silent letter, just like aleph is up here. Silent letter. In other words, if there is a vowel pointing around it, you don't hear the consonant sound at all. It defaults right to the vowel sound. And I'm going to show that to you as we go along. Okay? Let's go back down to the third row from right to left. We just did ayin. Let's do this one. We have fe. Okay? Fe, sofit. Okay? All right. Notice it extends below the line. Same rule applies. How do we know if it's not together for us to make it easy for us? Then we look at the top and it matches, doesn't it? The only difference is that this extends below the line. That makes it the final form. Okay. Let's go down to the last row here. From right to left, we have this letter called sadiq. Sadiq. And it's kind of like a nuts. The English word nuts at the end, TS sound. That's how it starts. Sadiq. Okay? Now, notice this is our other final form. The next one, sadiq, sofit. Okay? Notice it extends below the line. And notice that this looks just like this here. That's how we know that that is a sofit. Number one, it's extending below the line, with the exception of mem sofit, but most of them extend below the line, 4 of them out of 5. And the upper portion looks very similar to the regular form. Okay, let's finish up this alphabet. We have kuf. Kuf. Okay? Now, they've transliterated it K-O-F. I've seen it transliterated K-O-O-F. I've seen it transliterated Q-O-F. I actually, in my years of studying this, I think that the Q is closest to the sound. It's somewhere between a K sound and a Q sound. It's almost a light K and slipping into Q. Kuf. Kuf. Like that. Okay? All right, let's go to this one is resh, our sound. And then we have what's called one of the twin letters. And by the way, there are some twin letters. I'm going to point those out to you guys. We have sheen. Now, they're calling this sheen, but technically, if you see this written, it's going to have a dot right there. If I can make a dot with this... I don't know, that's sort of a lackadaisical dot, but it's a dot nonetheless. It's going to be on the top right-hand stem of this letter. That makes it sheen sound. That's called a superlinear dot, by the way, but you don't have to get all familiar with the terms. But that dot on the right-hand side is seen. Now, what if that dot is not there? What if we have the dot on the left-hand side? It becomes sheen. Now, my dot is not looking so good, but just imagine that that's a perfectly round dot. It's on top of that. Okay? And finally, the final letter of the Hebrew alphabet, Tav. Okay? So, I don't want to belabor teaching everyone in an online class like I do with my in-person students. We literally go through this together and we write. I'm going to leave that into you guys' hands to start practice writing these and speaking them, because once you get familiar enough with these letters, then we're going to be able to really see some things come out, okay? And this, I will say this, is a bit of a caveat to studying Hebrew, okay? The most difficult part, the hump, if you will, to get over before the street is a little easier, is just to memorize these letters. From that point on, if you get them memorized, things are going to start to be a lot easier for you, and you're going to really see some benefit, and you're going to surprise yourself. And that's what I tell all students, because I've had some students, they get discouraged because it does have to deal with this part, has to deal with rote memorization. It's the old way of doing things. I know the newfangled way in all of our schools now. They've done away with rote memorization, but I'm a firm advocate of it. I like the old methods. And I found that that's been the most beneficial and useful for people. So that is our 22 letters. The 5 final forms, we covered that. There's 3 other letters that are twin letters. And I'm going to get into that. I don't want to go too much into this part of it because I want to show you this first prayer. Because every class I endeavor to at least give you one of them. We're getting 8:45 at this point. But let's go then to the first prayer, and we're going to deconstruct the Shema. The Shema. Okay. So let's move this here. Okay. There's one thing that I want to show you in here too, along with this. Okay. All right. So can everyone see that okay? We have the Shema. Now, if you look down here in the translation, the English translation, here, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Okay. Now, you probably heard this multiple times. Shema Yisrael, Yehovah. Now, I'm going to talk to you why that's there in a minute here, but let's just say that that's supposed to be for Adonai or Yehovah or Yahweh. It's the name of God, okay? They're basically keeping with Jewish tradition, but let's start here again. Shema Yisrael, Yahuwah Eloheinu, Yahuwah Echad. I'm using the Kadosh name, the sacred name. Okay, so Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. And then the next line goes, Baruch Shem Kivod Malakuto Leolam Vayed. And then usually the congregation will go, Amen, like that, okay? So that's the Shema. Now, why is it that they put this little abbreviation here? We're going to turn to that, explain that, because you're going to see this in this book, and I don't want you to be confused by that. Let's go to this part here. Okay. Let me see if I can open this a little better for you guys. Do it that way. Okay, maybe we can do it that way. Let's try that. Okay, so okay, so they're going to talk about Jewish tradition here. It teaches that the name of God, you give him more respect. You guys probably already know some of this. They don't speak that name. They use things like Adonai, except in holy books like the Bible or Prayerbook, nor will they say a Hebrew name of God except in prayer, perhaps in religious study. So what they're saying is here that this book is going to print some of the names of God, allowing you to see the prayers they appear in prayer books. The Hebrew names of God are used in this book only when prayers are quoted. The Hebrew names of God are never used in exercises or in explanations of grammar. So basically what they're doing is they're continuing this thing that the Jews have, that they're afraid to say the name. So that's why you've got that there. And so how are they making it appear for you? What they're going to do here says, this book does not print the holiest name of God, the Tetragrammaton. And we start here. Actually, they're putting that from left to right. But Yod, He, Vav, He. Normally you see that right to left. The prayers in this book follow the convention of most prayer books in which, there it is right there. Let's see if I can get rid of this. Okay. So what it is they made this abbreviation for you. A yod with a shavah under it, and a yod with what's called a kametz. And you just have to put in the name of God there. Okay, so that's what that means when you see that. That's what I wanted to point out, because that's in that shavah twice. And I needed to explain that. So it appears in place of the tetragrammaton. One never pronounces either the tetragrammaton or the name. There it is. They give it in the parentheses. In prayer, Adonai should be read as if it were the name Adonai. There they read out Adonai for you. Let me bring this down a little bit more so you guys can see this. That might be a little better for you. Okay, so we've got Adonai, translated Lord. Okay, so when not praying, more traditional Jews read, and there it is, they're giving you this abbreviation, or Adonai as Hashem, okay, which means the name. Also, though the words El and Elohim sometimes refer to pagan gods, more often they are names of the God of Israel. More traditional Jews, when not praying, pronounce these names Elohim. Look at that. They alter it even more. They alter Elohim because they put a kof in there because they're trying to be respectful. That's what that's about. So they don't say the name. But that's because this book could be directed toward a lot of Jews that want to reconnect with their heritage and language. That's why they've retained this respectful tone throughout this book. That's why I am showing you this. So they might say Elohim or Kol. Okay, so these are the names of God you will find in this book. So there's the abbreviation. There's El. There's Elohim. There's Adonai. And there's Shaddai. Okay, like El Shaddai. Okay, all right, so that's just some explanation. Preliminarily. All right. Any questions so far?
One question, sir.
Yeah.
Is there any way you can screen share what that book is? What we're saying is a little hard to see in the little square I have to see. If you put it on screen share, we can really see it.
Yeah, I thought about that, but I could not find it.
Really?
On Kindle, but maybe it's out there. If you guys could find it, I would be happy to get that and do that for you, okay?
Okay, got it.
That's
I couldn't find it on Kindle either. I tried today or last night. But thank you.
yeah, because this camera could be useful. If we could do that, if we could screen share that, then you could have the resolution instantly and not have a problem so much. I have to kind of adjust this camera a little bit. But if we could do that, then at least I could just use this camera to show you the writing, handwriting. So we could still make a use of it. But the other, I think, would work better. I think you're right. So maybe you could, if you could find it for us, for sure, I'd love to do that. Any other questions or comments? Okay.
You know, this is gonna sound really stupid, but I have a prayer book, and it's just like a total mystery to me. Do we read it the same way we read ours, or do we start from the back of the book? I'm just confused.
If the book is more traditional, you're going to start from the back and read right to left and go that way. Yeah.
Okay, I think it was printed in like 78, maybe 68. So I'll go dig it up later and take a look at it. I'll have it for the next lesson.
Okay. One
Thank
thing
you.
now, when somebody's talking, I wish I could figure out how to make this thing so that it would highlight who's talking. I don't see it on here yet. Who was that just now? Was that?
Sandra, let me turn my video on.
Okay.
Oops, hold on.
Maybe to help me out, people could say this is so-and-so and then proceed with the question.
Okay.
That way it will help me, okay?
I have very right. I have very internet, so I'm trying as much as possible.
Okay. Okay. Now this, you're going to find that this book is more elementary. It's good for people just starting. A lot of the prayer books that you just buy off the shelf, even a lot of Jews can't get that. They have a hard time with that, okay? Especially American Jews, they haven't really learned a lot of Hebrew. But I like this because it's very basic. And it deconstructs everything down grammatically. So with that, we have just a few minutes left here. And what I'm going to do is we're going to sort of do a introduction to the first chapter. Okay? As we go, I'm going to show you the vowel pointings. And you can practice those as we go as well. Okay? Those are some other things that you're going to want to learn, memorize by rote. So let's switch down here to this chapter here. Okay, and I'm going to bring this up a little bit. There we go. All right. Okay, so basically what this is they're going to, the very first chapter, they're going to be dealing with nouns. Okay, and one of the things they're going to bring out in this section here is that when we say something in English, the equivalent in Hebrew may not make sense to us grammatically. I have found that Hebrew is very primordial. It hits hard, it gets right to the point, and there's not a lot of fluff in the language. For example, it says here, it's not enough to be able to translate individual words from Hebrew into English. You must also understand how these words are arranged in sentences. A sentence that makes sense in Hebrew may not make sense when translated literally in English. Well, that's a big clue for you right there, the difficulty in translating scriptures. Because the way that it's constructed grammatically is not within the vein of a romantic language. It's different. It's more, I like to use the term primal. And you'll see what I'm talking about. I'll expand on that a little bit later. Okay. This book will show time after time how the same thought is expressed one way in Hebrew and in a different way in English. Okay, so back to this section here, they're just telling you that you need to familiarize yourself with the Hebrew alphabet, and we covered that. So we're going to end this class tonight with going over the Hebrew vocabulary for the first chapter, because we're going to deconstruct the Shema, okay, and show you the grammatical structure, the things that come out in that prayer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here at the top of the vocabulary. And let me see if I can get this a little better for you guys, because I know that there we go. That's probably clearer for you. Let's start here. The word av. We have the aleph. That underneath it, we have something that looks like a cross. That's a kametz. That's an ah sound. Av. Well, if you see in your Bible, remember it talks about Abba, means father. Okay. Let's go down to the next one. We have echad. We have aleph. Underneath that is 3 dots and triangle. That's called a segol. That's an S sound. Then we have chet. Underneath that is a cross finger. Looks like it is a kametz. It's an ah sound. So we put this together, finish it with a dalet. We get echad. That means one. Okay? Next one, we have aleph with what's called a hataf shava. That's a reduced shava. And it's ah, and then we have noon with hirik, ni, ani. Ani in Hebrew means I. Okay? Then we have something called atah. Okay, that means you. By the way, that's masculine, you. Let's go down here to a word called who, which is hey, and next to it is a shurek. That's an oo sound. Ends with aleph, we get who. I'm reading right to left, these letters. Okay, that means he or it. Okay, then we have these masculine form of the word this in Hebrew is zayin with segol, ends with hey, we get zeh. Segol, those 3 dots on a triangle, that's one of the vowel pointings. That's S sound. Okay? Here's one that you might...
Just a moment, sir.
Go ahead.
You know what would be really helpful is if we had on the right side of these Hebrew words the way they are pronounced. That would be really helpful.
Okay.
But maybe we could go over it again and I could get a book and do that.
That would be a good step. Why don't we do that? We'll transliterate. Let's see here. We're going to take this one right here. This is pronounced Yisrael. So then go ahead and spell out Y-I-S-R-A-E-L. Y-I-S-R-A-E-L. Yisrael on your paper. I'm transliterating that for you into English. Okay, and we'll do that from now on. I'll just give you the transliteration and you can write it out. So then the next one here is mem, M sound with segol, that's the S sound. There's lamed. Next letter from right to left, look at that. 3 dots on triangle under that, that's segol, that's S sound. And it finishes with something called chaf sofit. So when we write this out in English, it's M-E-L-E-C-H. Melech. Melech. King. That means king. Okay? That's a good idea, Jack. We'll incorporate that because it's hard. Someone needs to know how you actually bring this out in English. Okay, so let's look at this here. We have mem. We have, uh-oh, there's my alarm. Let me shut that down because we're going to finish this. Just give me a minute here.
This is pretty good, don't you think? Yes, I think it's really good and simple.
Okay, there we go. How do I start the video here? Start video, okay. Okay, there we go. Okay, I think I got it. We can switch. There we go. Okay, let's get it back here to our okay. There we go. You should be able to see that pretty clearly now. Okay, so we just did this one. Melech, M-E-L-E-C-H, king. Let's finish these 2 and we'll call it a night after we have any questions or comments. And if you guys have ideas on how better we can do this, I'm all ears. This is the first time I've ever done an online class for this subject. I usually have a student sitting right next to me or a class of students and I'm writing on a board. And it's not quite as easy to get the writing out on a computer, but we're doing the best we can here. So let's look at this one here. This is the Hebrew word for Moses. We have mem. That little dot right there is called a holem, but it also doubles as a superlinear dot. So we have M, sh, yeah, we get Moshe. M-O-S-H-E-H. Try that. That's a good transliteration. Moshe, or Moses. Finally, to complete our vocabulary list, we have something called ayin, and underneath that is a bar called patach, and it's an ah sound. So we have ah. Remember ayin, like the aleph, is silent. So we don't pronounce anything in the letter. It goes right down to the bar-looking thing. That's called patach. It's an ah sound, like in the English word yacht. And it finishes with an M sound, mem sophique. Remember, that was one of the 5 final forms. It looks like a block character. So this word is Am. You ever heard the phrase Am Yisrael? That means nation of Israel or people of Israel. Okay? All right, so that completes our vocabulary. That completes our vocabulary for tonight, and I think that's enough into this. Any questions or comments?
I just thought it was very good, simple enough to understand. I'm going to have to get the book.
Yeah, the book will be very helpful for those that, you know, and I'm going to be covering most of what's in the book here on the camera, but and if we could figure out a way to get it on the screen, that would be good too. I just haven't discovered that, but some of you guys out there that are more adept at the web searches, maybe Yahuwah willing, someone will come up with a way to do that.
Amen.
Just use this camera for the writing. So until the next time we meet again, I would encourage you guys, get yourself, you can go to Google, put in the alphabet, and start writing about 12 times each letter. Say the letter, and so that you can hear yourself, you can see it, and you're writing it. And hopefully when we come back, you'll be a little more familiar with letters. And then the next class, I'm going to talk about the vowel pointings. There were some of them in the vocabulary list, but I'm going to give you more of a broader list that you will see most of the time. There's always some exceptions. We won't get into that because that comes down the line, but most of the time we're going to go over the basic vowel pointings for you next time we meet, okay? Let me see what we got down here in the chat. We got some comments here. Okay.
Thank you.
Quite
Excellent.
welcome. You guys have a great week until we meet again. I guess Jack will set it up for us. My schedule's pretty open most of the time, especially at night. So we can carry on when you guys decide you want to schedule something.
Okay, shalom, everybody.
Shalom,
Till next
shalom.
time.